Hey, here we go. You can scoot on into frame a little bit better there.
There we go.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
This is the Fantasy Books and Games comic book preview stream. I am your regular host, Aaron, and today I am joined by our special guest host,
Also,
Aaron.
also Aaron.
So yes, how exciting! Two Aarons for the price of one. So yeah, there's not like a huge amount of stuff coming out tomorrow, but a large portion of the stuff that I regularly get in my pull is coming out tomorrow. So it's kind of a big week for me, even though there's not a lot of like new. There's a few new number one issues. I got a few to talk about, but not as many as some other weeks. There's just like so many comics. But since this Aaron, this is your first time doing the stream,
Hmm.
so we're just kind of you're going to kind of learn as we go. But one of the things that you'll learn is that I always like to start the stream by showing off the newest facsimile reprint that is coming out,
Okay.
because that's the new thing, is like Marvel and DC and publishers reprinting old comics. So we always start with the facsimile reprints, and one of the regular facsimiles we're always showing off is the Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is the hardest title to say. I can't, like, it's hard for me not to just say Crisis on Infinite Earths, just because of that THS
Welcome to
there.
Earth.
Welcome to Earth, exactly. Yeah, you get that reference. But yeah, so Crisis on Infinite Earths. I don't have a lot to say about it that I haven't already said in previous months. This has been coming out for almost this whole year. This is issue 10 of a 12 issue series, originally published in 1985, celebrating 50 years of DC Comics. And here we are, what, 40 years later? So, wow,
Be 100 years soon.
pretty soon. So yeah, so I'm just glad that they're reprinting it as single issues, because it's gorgeous artwork by George Perez. Like, there's just and it's so it's like the definition of an epic story. It literally is about the death of the universe and involves almost every single character that DC Comics has ever published. It's quite a monumental story. So yeah, that's worth talking about. Also coming out tomorrow, another one from DC. This might not look like a facsimile at first glance, but this is a facsimile. This is issue 609 of Batman from I want to say 2001, 2002. This is the first. This is when Jim Lee first joined DC, and he did this Batman story with Jeff Loeb called Hush. You may have heard. You may have heard of the character Hush. But so this is the fun thing about this is, like I said, at first glance, you might not realize that it is a facsimile, because
It's fairly modern looking.
it's modern looking, right? I mean, Jim Lee's still drawing comics, and comic book production techniques have not changed a whole lot since like 2001. It's like a comic book back then. There's a little bit of a certain look to it, but for the most part, it looks very similar to a comic that you see on the shelves today. What you don't see in comics on the shelves today are advertisements for Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring, an epic DVD experience.
Oh,
Remember, look at that special extended DVD edition 4 disc platinum series.
I like the statue it comes with.
Collector's DVD gift set. Yeah, the statues. The you know what those characters are?
It's the I forget what they're called. It's the gates on the. It's the river gate. I forget what it's called.
That
Unfortunately.
is what it is. It's the king's, like, the statues, the giant
Yeah,
colossus type
they got an
statues.
actual name, and I'm gonna get eviscerated if
That's
anybody
okay. I
knows
don't
that one.
remember either, and I literally just watched the 1978 Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings
Nice.
animated movie uh 2 days ago, I
Wha-
think.
I believe Aragorn looks a bit like Conan the Barbarian in
Yes,
that.
he's got like that Conan He-Man haircut,
Well,
where
he's got like the short tunic that like stops at like
the
at the
the
thighs.
thighs, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's very, like, it's not. I don't know. I don't know what it
I
is.
I know I I know that like the mocap, not mocap. It's not mocap because it's rotoscope.
Rotoscoping,
What you
but
would call the mocap actor like tripped in one scene when he's running, and you could just see like
we were
Aragorn just
I
fumble.
pointed that out to my wife because it's such a funny scene, because it's like this. It's the scene. You'll remember it from the Peter Jackson films. It's when the orcs take the hobbits, Merry and Pippin,
Mm.
and Gimli and Legolas and Aragorn have to chase them, and they're just running
It,
across fields.
it's funny how that like little area has two tidbits of trivia, because if you know any modern Lord of the Rings fan, you can't get through that scene without noticing that, like, without somebody going, by the way, Vigo like broke his toe during this scene.
Right?
It's
Yeah.
one of those
So
trivias that just always
it's a
drops.
cursed scene. Vigo breaks his toe, and the 1978 actor trips and falls. But what's funny about that in the animated one is that he like clearly just like trips over his foot while he's running and falls. And I'm like, this is an animated movie. You could have just like put like a rock there or like a log, like
You
and
could have just done it a
you,
second time.
or you could have just
Just
not animated it.
yeah,
Like just but
just cut the animation 1 second before that.
but no, they kept it in there, and you know what? To be fair, it's authentic. I'm
Yeah,
sure Aragorn, if they're doing a cross country run,
might just
at
trip.
some point he's gonna trip. Yeah, Zach Brannigan got style tips from Aragorn. Yeah, it was very Brannigan esque. It was. All right, let's stop talking about 50, 45-year-old animated films about Lord of the Rings. Let's talk about some comics. Two trade paperbacks that are notable that are coming out tomorrow. I can't really show off this one because it is sealed, but it is Destroy All Humans. And the reason it is sealed is not because it is for adults only. It's because this is a book that is about Magic the Gathering, the card game, and I believe each book comes with a card that you can play in the game.
Yes.
Do you know a little bit about this? I haven't read it at all.
It's a specific. I don't know about it myself. It's got a specific. It's about like playing Magic. It's not like a Yu-Gi-Oh scenario where
Right.
it's not like a Yu-Gi-Oh scenario where it's like, breaking through the setting of Magic. It's like
Yeah.
they're playing Magic, the card game, in like school and stuff.
It's like a high school drama.
Yes, yeah.
But it's about people that play Magic the Gathering. The
yeah.
same way you'd have a sports drama about people that play baseball or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the Magic card is. It's like a specific one. It's not a random one. It's like
Mhm.
a reprint of a specific card. I don't remember what it is. I could like Google it on my phone.
It's you know what? That's enough information for everybody watching this. But it is pretty popular. Like the first volume sold out. I don't know, but selling out at the distributor. But we've sold a lot of copies of it. A lot of people are just really interested in it. And to be fair, it's manga. It's about magic.
I mean, heck, a lot of people just want the free card inside too.
That too.
It's a nice bonus to have a manga attached.
That's right. Another trade paperback collected edition that's coming out tomorrow. GI Joe. People, if you watch this stream, you know I talk about GI Joe a lot. This is not the Energon Universe GI Joe. This is the regular GI Joe, written by Larry Hama, continuing his series that he started in 1982. Man, that's wild. Like GI Joe, this series, this book, this continuing story is as old as I am. It's the same age as me. That's pretty wild. I guess I sort of just doxed myself on stream a little bit.
It happens.
But you know what? Whatever. But I like this book. I don't want to spend.
I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that you're old.
It's definitely not, especially judging from my taste in comics. But I don't want to show off too much. But this is a cool book. I just am enjoying it a lot. This is like classic. It's all the classic Joe designs, like the Zartan there. And Larry Hama is just in top form. Yeah, just really, really, really good stuff. So if you haven't been following GI Joe, but if you are always kind of into GI Joe, I recommend getting into the new series, the new books that are coming out from Image, because they're really good.
Just a note about this: I love classic GI Joe
Let's
like
put it on
vehicle
screen.
designs.
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
the triple helicopter here. Like I just saw that while you were flipping through. I'm like, what an amazingly terrible vehicle. I love it.
It's part of the charm of GI Joe is that it was like, I think everybody that likes it, we all know it was made to sell toys.
Exactly.
And they're really like
they're good toys.
They're inventive and creative toys,
Yeah.
and they're fun to play with. So they look cool on a comic book page.
Mm-hmm.
They also look kind of silly, but that's part of the charm. So yeah, let's move on to some other new stuff. I guess on the subject of GI Joe, this coincidentally was at the top of my pile here. Is the new Energon Universe GI Joe? This is number 3 of the new series. Now, Baron, Aaron, don't mean to
that's okay.
Misname you, but I know that you've been reading the Energon Universe books, haven't you? Like GI Joe and Transformers.
I've read GI Joe and Transformers. I've not really been reading Void Rivals. novels.
Okay,
But
that's
I've been reading these two, and I've read the GI Joe attached ones as well, Cobra Commander,
mhm,
Destro,
mhm.
etc.
So this series continues out of the Cobra Commander, Duke, Destro series, et cetera, et cetera. And I haven't read this issue yet, so
Ooh,
I was reading other things today, but I'm very excited to read it because I love GI Joe. But you did read it, am I? Am I?
yes, I did.
So I don't know. What are your thoughts without spoiling anything for me, of course?
Uh, I continue to enjoy it. Back on the vehicle take that I mentioned earlier, one thing
Hmm.
I've consistently liked about this series is that they do zero redesigns, and it's kind of neat to see all of these like campy outfits and like kind of slightly goofy looking, vehicles played dead serious in like a modern art style. It's refreshing and great. It does mean that there's sometimes like weird cases. There's a pair of characters that show up towards the end that until now have been presented a specific way, and then like in the comic they're presented in their more old accurate toy and comic book accurate way, and it's a bit weird considering how they've been portrayed up until now.
I'm not even having not read the issue. I'm pretty confident who you're referring to,
Yeah,
and I'm super excited about
no, that's completely fair.
it.
But it's been incredibly good. One thing with like the GI Joe one in particular, like I'm pretty familiar with Transformers, and but like GI Joe, I just sort of missed it a bit growing up. So like I know all of the biggest names in it, but I don't know a lot of like the smaller names and stuff like that. So like I
Hmm.
know the Energon series has been doing a lot of like, let's take this very accepted and conventional and known thing and like twist it a bit. Like I know the one for this is that, the Baroness is a Joe.
She's on. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
like the big one for this. But like other than that, I don't know. So like if a character shows up that's like an unexpected side character, like because that's what they're doing in Transformers a lot is they have a lot of like unexpected side characters who are like beloved
Hmm.
by the fans but completely unimportant in all of the media, and
Yeah.
they're like giving them a little spotlight, and that's super cool. I can't tell when they're doing that here because I just know like 8 GI Joe characters off the top of my head, and it's all the ones you'd think it is. It's
Yeah.
mostly Cobra characters actually.
The villains are awesome.
They are.
Also, there are less villains to know because Cobra had the advantage of being like a paramilitary terrorist organization.
Hmm.
So the toys, every time the toy line would come out, there'd be like 8 new GI Joes,
Here's
and
a
then
Crimson Guard.
two villains, and then two faceless guards.
Hmm.
And so yeah, it'd be like Destro and Cobra Commander, and then you buy
The,
12 of the guards, and then yeah.
there is a scene I think is slightly silly because they're talking about like a sleeper agent in one
Oh
of the
yeah.
scenes, and they're like, "This guy's a sleeper agent," and like they pop open his shirt, and he's got like a Cobra shirt on with like a symbol. I'm like, all I could think of was like, that's a really ineffective sleeper agent. Like, I guess that guy just thought he had a really cool graphic tee before now. But
Yeah.
I just thought that was funny.
I, that's just classic Joe. Yeah, comic book.
Hmm.
Yeah, like why would you wear your if you're incognito? Like you know
It
what?
just it's cool. It's
Yeah,
fun.
it
It's a nice visual
it
cue to show that he was Cobra the whole time. Sure,
exactly. It's a visual
works
cue.
out.
But yeah, no, I love this GI Joe comic. Do you have a favorite Joe? I know you say you didn't really have the toys as a kid, but reading the series now, do you have a favorite that's like appeared in it?
Hmm. I like. He's not a Joe. I like Zartan. I like Zartan quite a bit.
Zartan's awesome.
He's just great.
He's one of the. I mean, the Dreadnoks were always kind of my favorite villains. Like I liked them more than Cobra
They're fun.
because they're like Mad Max, but like from
Yeah,
Florida swamps.
the guy
And
who shows up to paramilitary fights with the chainsaw. It's
yeah,
great.
exactly. Yeah, no, that's the quality pick, Zartan. All right, let's move on to some other comics here. Another that's not one of yours. Another book that is in my regular pull that I haven't had a chance to read
Oh no.
today, but I understand that you did read it.
Yes.
The Moon is Following Us. This is issue 5. I can't believe we're already 5 issues into this, but this is the new series by Daniel Warren Johnson and Riley Rossimo. I've talked about every single issue that has come out, so I don't have a lot to say about this that I haven't already said before, but it is a really, aside from just saying it's a good comic, I think another way to put it is it's an extremely Daniel Warren Johnson esque comic, which if you've read any, like a lot of Daniel Warren Johnson, I think you'll know what I mean. But Yeah, I really like this. You read this issue, Baron. Am I not mistaken? What did you think of
I enjoyed it. This one is going to be even harder to talk about than the GI Joe without mentioning that it features spoilers.
it?
Um, there is a major critical thing that happens. That's there. Something happens.
Something happens. Okay.
Um, Other than that, the designs, I continue to like the designs. I continue to like the setting. It's definitely interesting. This like dreamscape of like a child's mind, and like you can look over. One of the things I think is interesting is you can like look over the characters that are like the side characters, and you can kind of tell this is like an imaginary friend the kid had when they were like an infant, and this is like one they had when they were like 4.
Hmm.
So like you can kind of like track it based on like the coherency and solidness of the characters basically. There's one character who like shows up briefly that's just like a bunch like in this issue, but I'm not going to say the context. This looks like
Okay.
a bunch of scribbled lines with a cat's face and some like knives coming out of it.
Okay.
So it's
Yeah.
like very clear this character was invented from like very like I don't know, very basic ideas that like
Hmm.
a toddler might form kind of. So like I like that about it. It's full of all these imaginary characters, but you see like the kid growing up through the imaginary characters.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No. I mean,
Okay.
having read the series up until now, yes, that's in line with what it is. That's funny about the scribbles. Did you ever watch the cartoon Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends?
I have absolutely watched that cartoon.
Did you see the episode with the scribbles where
Yes.
they have the imaginary friends that are made by
Like
like
toddlers.
toddler little
Yeah.
babies, and that's just made me think of that.
Nope.
It's a very
That's
funny
actually
episode.
about. I didn't even think about that. That is about the same energy.
Well, awesome, awesome. So that is a good one. Another one, man. See, this is like all the hits off of my poll, and I haven't had a chance to read them. But that's why a little behind the scenes magic here. I sort of guilted Aaron into
Like
being on the
100%.
stream today, but it was a good thing you did because you read all of the books I normally read, so you can talk about them with an informed opinion. But this is an interesting one. This is, of course, Batman and Robin, Year One, by Mark Waid and Chris Samney, who are two creators that I'm a huge fan of. And I've been talking about this book a lot. And Aaron, I know you would say you're a Batman fan, yeah?
Yes, I do like Batman. I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of people that don't like Batman a bit.
Yeah, that's true.
But like I like Batman, but in particular, like I like the extended Bat family.
Mhm.
And that obviously includes Robin, obviously includes and Dick Grayson's probably my second favorite Robin. And
Second favorite.
yeah,
Uh,
Jason Todd.
Jason Todd's your favorite. Oh,
I
okay.
love Jason Todd.
Okay.
I am also fully willing to accept that that's probably just a bad take. Like,
There's a lot of people out there that like him now that he's the Red Hood and he's
hmm.
like the edgy Robin.
I even like him being like during his like they don't do it a whole lot. They didn't do it a whole lot out of the gate, but like in retrospect, they do a lot of like uh in retrospect they do a lot of him being like the crappy Robin. And I kind
Yeah.
of like that. Like I kind of like that like Grayson was kind of a really hard act to follow. So like Todd has a bit of like resentment over being just the worst Robin, and they play off that as sort of a foreshadowing of his eventual
Yeah.
everything else. Like that's fun. That's enjoyable. Like him being perfectly competent, just not as much.
Right, right.
Uh,
That's funny. Jessica says, "Man, did we just have this convo?" Yes, she and I did just have this conversation the other day. We were watching the Batman animated series,
mhm.
and just talking about the differences in all the different Robins because there's so many of them now.
Yes.
But I like this Batman and Robin book because it's Dick Grayson specifically, and as I've said before, I like the Year One style stories because
Mhm.
that's the kind of Batman that I prefer. Like not the overpowered prep time can defeat.
He's figured stuff out.
Yeah, and it's more like the stories are generally more grounded. Of like he's just got to be a detective. Like he's
Mhm.
not beating Darkseid and whatnot. But if I'm not mistaken, did you find out about this series like for the first time today?
Kinda.
Kinda,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. That I mean, I've obviously shelved it before, and I've obviously like looked at it before and checked people
Hmm.
out with it before. But like, it's one of those that like we get like 50 Batman books,
Yeah,
so it's easy to ignore a
you're
bunch of them.
forgiven for like not noticing one of the 50 weekly Batman
And
books that come out.
like just today, you said that like, hey, there's a new Batman and Robin book that's or Batman and Robin Year One. I like Batman and Robin. I like Year One stuff. So I was like, oh, okay, that sounds interesting. And I think I asked you like which Robin it was, and you're like Dick Grayson. I'm like, okay, and I grabbed it because like I don't I don't dislike anymore when I think of Robin, I think of either Damian Wayne or Tim Drake. And I don't
Mhm.
dislike either Damian Wayne or Tim Drake. I think they're both perfect fine characters. They're just not my preferred ones.
Yeah, yeah.
They're towards the bottom of the list. But like and nothing wrong with it. It's a really powerful list.
Yeah, that's true.
But when you said that, I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting. And I like it quite a bit because I've not read it until today, so I kind of like burned through four
You
issues
had
of
like
it.
a crash course. You just like read the first 4 issues.
And I rather enjoy it. It's nice to see. It's nice to see like well, it's nice to see Robin portrayed as like the boy wonder, kind of like he actually behaves kind of like a kid in this,
Yeah.
and like Robin tends to be portrayed like most of the comics I came into through like the WB and the DCAU, and when
Hmm.
Dick Grayson Robin is in that, he's very
He's
mature. He's very clearly like a 17-year
he's
old.
college age
Yeah,
Batman,
he's like
really, or college age Robin, and a lot of just like because I get the same impression too from the Batman the animated series, and the
mm,
reason for that is the Batman the animated series. A lot of the stories they were drawing from was the '70s Batman, like the
mm,
Neil Adams era,
where he
and
is
in that
older.
era, Robin is college age. That's basically like Teen Titan Robin.
Yeah,
Like like he's literally in college at some point, and then he forms the Titans like while he's still Robin.
mm,
Like this is before they're the Teen Titans even. And so yeah, like for a long time, Dick Grayson was always just Batman Junior, and he the kind of a lot of the stories they did with him was like him and Bruce butting heads,
hmm
and Bruce driving him away, and him kind of growing up to become Nightwing, where he's kind of just very, like I said, like Batman Junior in a
yeah.
way. And I really like these young Robin stories where he's really like flashy and charismatic. He's a circus performer,
Yeah,
and he brings that
he's
energy to being a superhero.
he's like there's a really good Nightwing comic to where like uh um someone runs away. I think it's Superman's son. Like Superman's son like runs away from home. It was really bad because I can't remember it off the top of my head. It's John, right?
John Kent, yeah.
John Kent. John Kent runs away from home and like he's scared and like afraid and like Batman finds him, but like Nightwing like steps in and is like, "Hey, you want to see a cool trick?" and like starts juggling and like doing handstands and stuff and like it's kind of great. Like he's a bit of a goofball. Like he's way in all interpretations, he's way more charismatic than Bruce, or at least way more
Right.
charismatic than Batman. Batman can put on a pretty charming face as Bruce Wayne, but that always feels fake.
Yeah, yeah.
Versus it always feels genuinely how like Dick is
Right,
basically.
right.
This one about the only thing I could say that's like takes me out of it a bit is that like there's this like subplot of like the child services worker who's like, man, maybe this
Yeah.
billionaire playboy shouldn't have like a kid in his care, and they're really not doing a good job of explaining why like Bruce enlisting Dick as like a sidekick is not a
As
terrible
his
idea.
ward.
Like a horrible, like well, not just having him as a ward, but
But
like having him as
as a sidekick, yeah.
like accepting that at all just seems like a terrible idea. And don't get me wrong, like we have like the third person view or the narrative view to where we know obviously it all works out because it's Batman and Robin and it turns out fine. But like going into it with none of that, you're just like, man, this is a bad idea, Bruce. There's like no way this is going to turn out well.
Yeah.
And it obviously it's fine. It's just like they're not doing a good. They're not arguing that.
There's always, I mean, that's always like a little bit of a joke almost, and you kind of have to take it as,
With a lot of grain of salt,
a huge lump of
multiple
salt.
grains of salt.
Because yeah, it's like at a certain point, it's like is Bruce Wayne just training a child army,
Mm,
of orphans, uh, not unlike the X-Men, but
yeah,
yeah, and it's like it's a comic book. It's a
you
little bit of
gotta.
a fantasy element
I
to
mean,
it.
you gotta separate yourself from that because then
Yeah.
it's fun. Because otherwise, it is great fun. I
Hmm.
kind of keep. There's no reason this is going to happen. It's just kind of an old Robin thing. I kind of keep hoping that like Robin's going to have like a sling, not like a slingshot, but like
Oh
a full
yeah,
blown
like
like
a
David and Goliath sling.
yeah,
Because like
yeah,
that was
yeah.
like he had that back in like I don't know the 40s probably.
I'm sure. Yeah, yeah, he did. But one thing I will say that this series just I love it so much because Chris Samney's art. This is like my preferred type of Batman, where it's like it's dark but still like colorful in its own
Yeah,
way, and I like that it's the classic bat suit, like with
yeah.
gray and
It,
yellow belt.
it's another one of the Batmans where like they're close to my ideal Batman, which is as close to the DCAU Batman as possible.
Yeah, that's a good way to
Um,
put it.
the more similar it is to the Batman the Animated Series, the better Batman is, and this one's pretty close.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, but this is, I don't know, this might be my favorite Batman book that's coming out right now. Uh, Granted, there are so many; it's hard to keep track of like which ones are actually releasing properly. But
Mm.
yeah, I'm really liking it. All right, let's move on to let's see. I got one other book that's in my regular poll. I'll just briefly touch on it. Space Usagi, which is I love Usagi Yojimbo, and I especially love Space Usagi. Just to show it off, it's I don't know if you know what this is, Aaron, but this is just Stan Sakai during one period. He just decided to do a Usagi Yojimbo story, but set in space. Like
As you
that's
do.
literally all it is. It's just
A-
like what if it was like Usagi Yojimbo but Star Wars?
As you do.
And it's so much fun because I love that it is it
It's unapologetic.
yeah, exactly. And it's just like he's got like an electric samurai sword. They got laser guns and robots, and it's just really
Big
good.
old kabuki mask Darth Vader.
Exactly. And and that's I think that's what makes it work so well is because we all know Star Wars drew on a lot of Japanese
Yeah.
history and film
It
for its own design. So it like taking Usagi Yojimbo and just sliding it in there, just actually like it's almost
just
like a 1-1.
overlapping.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
But
poetry. It rhymes.
it's exactly. But no, I love this comic. This is originally came out I believe in it was in the early 90s, and so it's getting a color reprint, and that's what these are. It's in color now, and really really good stuff. I really like it. This is the third and final issue of the series. There's only 3 issues, so highly recommend it if you like fun space adventure with rabbits and samurais and such. Yeah, great stuff. Okay, gosh, still a lot of stuff here. I think this one. So let's go ahead and talk about this because you read this issue too, right?
Yes, I have.
Excellent. I read this one. I finally read an issue that's in my poll. Speaking, of course, the New Gods #2. Now, if you've watched this stream, if you watched the episode where we talked about New Gods #1, I was kind of I don't know what's the word, middle of the road about it. I
Lukewarm.
lukewarm. I liked it. It's an enjoyable issue, but
Mm.
like I'm always so I like reserved when it comes to first issues. Like I don't want to
Because
get
it's not hard to make a good first issue. It's hard to make a good third issue.
exactly. That's exactly it. Like first issue is like really easy to do. You just set up an interesting, compelling mystery.
Mm.
You don't have to pay it off. It's still a good first issue if you just set up a good mystery with like a couple of good dialogue scenes. And to me, that's what the first issue was. It's a good high concept. It was a good selling point, but it also just it felt kind of light on its actual content, and it was mostly just setting up the high
Yeah,
concept.
it's establishing.
So issue two, a lot was writing on. I guess is what I'm getting at. So here we have issue two of New Gods, and so for me personally, a lot was writing on. Like if I was going to continue to follow this series, it was really going to be off of issue two. And before I ask you what you thought of it, I will just say I like this issue a lot. Probably more than issue one, in fact. I love with a capital L that this opening scene is a different artist, which is not to say that what's his name, Cagle.
I didn't catch that, but I definitely thought it definitely felt different.
So this is
I have a comment on
this
that
is
page in particular. I'll get
this
to in a second.
so this is a Jesse Lonergan who I know is I think it's Lonergan. I don't remember the first name exactly. I'm familiar with his work, but I can't place what other books of his that I really like. But this page is beautiful, and I love this page kind of spoils the book for me a little bit because I'm looking at this and again, no disrespect to Cagle who is a fine artist, but I'm looking at this and I'm like, I kind of wish the whole book just looked like
Hmm?
this because this is somebody that's doing a little bit more of a Jack Kirby style, and he's paying tribute to the roots of the New Gods and the Fourth World. But I especially like Lonergan's art because it's a little bit like Jack Kirby mixed with like a little like Paul Popey, in fact. And I actually get a little bit of Chris Samney vibe, the artist from the book we were previously talking about, Batman Robin Year One. But so he does this 4-page intro, and looks great. So I was instantly hooked. And then they go back to the regular artist, who is really good. And I'm not saying it was a downer after that. It's just like I was so struck by the like the different artists because I just really wasn't expecting it. And I
Mm.
opened it up and I was just like, whoa, what is this? So yeah, I liked this issue a lot. Had an awesome Big Barda scene. I love Big Barda.
Mhm.
Moved the plot along a little bit. Yes, pretty good. What were your thoughts?
Awful, 0 out of 10. No, I actually liked it quite a bit.
Stinker.
I actually particularly liked. Okay, so
We'll go
I
back to
was
that page.
I wasn't able to articulate it in the same way you did because I don't know all. I know who Jack Kirby is obviously, but I don't know a
Yeah,
lot of other artists and stuff. I really liked this page. It's gonna sound really lazy. But I like this page because it did remind me of like older comics.
yeah,
This looked like something that was a modern take on like if somebody redrew a page from like the 60s in like a more modern or the 70s
yeah, yeah.
in like a more modern and like with more modern techniques.
Which is when the original New Gods comics were. It was the 70s.
Yes, and I liked it quite a bit in way like I in the way that you said, but I couldn't articulate because I didn't know the artist it was emulating. But like I looked at this page and I'm like, this looks great. It looks amazing.
Yeah,
And like I like a lot of the like they kept the designs that were really good the same, and they kept the designs and they did a little bit of work on the designs that could use a bit of change. I like their interpretation of Orion's, I'll be frank, kind of goofy looking, jet bike he rides by having it be this like A, more motorcycle shaped and B, like a light cycle. That's kind of neat. Um, I liked like it was very, very good. I mean, yeah.
keep talking.
I do have a bit of a thing too where like I know the biggest names in like New Gods basically if it showed up in a Justice League Unlimited episode I know who they are, but like they got to a character on here I'll move my comic
Yeah,
in
do
since I'm
that.
pointing at it. They got to like this guy here and it's like you understand that entirely too well, Seraphan. I'm like okay I gotta look up who that is because that was said with the inflection of this is a character I'm supposed to identify, so I went to the side and looked up who that was real quick, and it didn't actually help that much. So there's definitely new god characters. I absolutely have no idea who they are, but for the most part, I know Desaad, I know Metreon, I know Orion, I know Mr. Miracle, but like there is bits of that throughout it where I'm learning as
Yeah,
I go.
and I think that was kind of one of my concerns. Is like the New Gods is so there's like a lot of lore built into it.
Mm,
Like it's such a there's a lot to live up to with when you do a New Gods series.
mm,
And I did kind of get that. Like I'm not even like a New Gods expert. Like I really like the original comics, but there's so much of it I don't even remember a lot of the original stuff. And
mm.
so I do kind of get that impression like reading this. There's so many characters that are constantly referenced. I wonder how much like a new reader that just like is reading it for the
Yeah.
first time, how much they would actually get out of it.
I know a little bit just because like they show up. I mean, obviously, Darkseid shows up in everything. Darkseid's in
Sure, sure.
anything DC adjacent. Darkseid shows up in. But like I've seen Orion in a few things. I mostly know him from like Justice League Unlimited, but I also know him
Hmm.
from Kingdom Come. Is actually
Oh
where I
yeah.
like kind of know him a bit from, and like
Hmm.
or rather, how do I say? Kingdom Come was the first time I like liked Orion. Like I enjoyed what they did with him in Kingdom Come, to where it's like he's like trying to be really really good. It's just that spoiler alert, he rules Apocalypse, and like he can't do it in a non terrible way because like the planet just doesn't work that way, and
it's Apocalypse.
he's miserable, and
Yeah.
like that like made me go, oh, this character is interesting, and then I saw him in other stuff and saw that he's just this like that's his whole character is just trying to be a good guy and he's just like built to not be.
Orion is the ultimate nature versus nurture story
He
because he's
is.
Darkseid's son, who's raised by the High Father to be good,
Mhm.
and he is good, and he wants to be good, but he like can't deny
He's
his innate nature.
well, he's also like Darkseid's favorite son. He's the dark sidiest of the dark side sons.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
Darkseid probably hates him too. Darkseid hates all of his kids because he's
that's true.
Darkseid,
The dark
but
side.
like he hates him the least.
Yeah, exactly.
And I like the look they did on him. Like they kept enough the same that he's still recognizable, and they changed enough because like, I mean,
That was one thing I noticed. Like
his I want to
it's a
not
lot.
like his helmet because it's like got a very modernized take on it,
I
but
was thinking that.
his
Yeah,
old helmets a bit goofy looking, so I can understand them doing something to change it. And ultimately,
trying
I
to
like it. It's just more of a guilty pleasure.
I like yeah, there's like it's like definitely sleeker, and
Yes,
I will admit I think I prefer the old helmet just because it's like such a Jack Kirby design,
yes,
and I like superhero comics when they look a little corny
a
or
little goofy.
a little goofy. That not everything needs to be like super sleek. But you know, I don't hate it. Like it still works for what it is. And then I think one other thing, just want to reference, like just to show off this awesome Big Barda
Yes.
reveal. I love this. This whole scene was really good, but this is such a great looking page
Hmm.
because like Big Barda, as you can see here, Big Barda is huge. She's Big Barda. She's like a couple of feet
She's like
taller.
9 feet
Yeah,
tall.
she's taller than Mr. Miracle. And so I like that this is from his perspective, like he's looking up at her. She's just this towering giant, and you got her
Itty bitty baby.
in the itty bitty baby. She's just like palming. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful comic. So I gotta like we'll see where it goes from here, but the issue 2 sold me on it. So I think I'm like I don't have any reservations about it anymore. It could still lose me, I suppose, just in the sense that all comics can lose me
Mm.
eventually. But I'm over my like just my trepidation if I should trust these creators. Like I'm all in on them. So yay!
DC all in. You're all
Yeah,
in.
that's how they advertise it. All in. But yeah, so yeah, New Gods pretty good. Okay, I've got a couple of other. I got some. Oh, it's these are all like new number one issues that come out tomorrow.
Oh.
Is that all that you have left as well?
That's the only one I have left I haven't gotten to.
Awesome. Okay, so we've got some new releases, some new number one issues. I think first we'll start with this one, Ultimate Wolverine number one, which I'm gonna be totally straight with you. I am only talking about this comic because I feel obligated to, because it's Ultimate Wolverine, and you know it's there's a lot of people that are pretty excited for it. I found this issue to be uh, you might not be surprised to hear this. I found it to be just fine. Not didn't blow me away. It's if you're enjoying the new Ultimate books, which again I don't think they're terrible. They're just not for me. I think this fits in with those pretty well. It's kind of light on story. I think that's my criticism of it. It looks good. I think that's one thing I want to highlight is like the art is pretty nice, but it's basically just it's Wolverine, but he's the Winter Soldier in the
Mm,
Ultimate Universe, and that's
yeah.
kind of yeah I know. Like I'm trying not to be too down on it, but that's basically it. It's just Wolverine is the Winter Soldier in the Ultimate Universe, and the reason I think I have such a negative reaction to that is because that type of like mishmash feels like
The
the only thing that Marvel does these days.
Well, it
Where
also feels like a bit redundant. Like it feels like redundant overlap because like Wolverine's already Weapon X. Like
yeah,
he went from an American super secret evil super
yeah, and
secret biomechanical weapon to a Russian super secret or Hydra super secret biomechanical weapon. Like
right, and
you turn the dial half a tick.
that's kind of like what they're going for is just like it's I mean it's the Weapon X version of Wolverine, but in the Ultimate Universe, it's not Weapon X, it's Winter
Winter
Soldier. You know,
Soldier.
where he's just like the Russians got a hold of him and turned him into the Winter Soldier instead of the Canadian government,
Yeah.
as we all stifle a laugh that the Canadian government would be operating on the world stage with death soldiers.
As they do.
You know
It's a
what?
comic book.
Yeah, it's exactly. But yeah, so maybe it'll go somewhere more interesting in the future. But this is a criticism. So this is a criticism I have about a lot of number one comics, and this is where I try not to come off as too pretentious. But I feel like a lot of number one comics have this problem where the like one or two sentence description that you use to advertise the book, it's the Ultimate Wolverine, and in this series he's the Winter Soldier, and that's all the story is. Like you don't get any more beyond what you were just told.
Hmm.
You know, like other than you get to experience the art, and but like this there's the story itself, there's not much more to it. It's just like, oh okay, the story just revealed to me that Wolverine is the Winter Soldier. which is exactly how you advertised it
It's
to
the
me.
fridge pitch.
It's exactly. So it's like that's where I read these and I feel like I want a little bit more in the issue. Like I know he's the Winter Soldier. That's how you sold me on it. So I'm coming across a little bit more negative than I mean to, but yeah, it didn't really grab me, but it could. There's room to go. There's room to go. I don't know if I stopped on a page, but Nightcrawler is in this issue. You can kind of see him as his Mystique.
Is he a priest?
He is a
'Cause,
priest.
I mean, that's not again. That's another one of the let's turn it a quarter. Like let's barely turn the dial a little.
Well, I mean, Nightcrawler is a pastor in the regular.
Oh, fair enough.
He is a pastor. I mean, they've done stories about that before, where he is a pastor.
It fits.
So it's appropriate. Oh yeah, we can just talk about Nightcrawler for the rest of the stream. I love Nightcrawler.
He's pretty great.
He is pretty great.
I don't think that's an unpopular opinion.
No,
I think
it's not.
literally everybody likes Nightcrawler.
I think he's in the echelon of like a lot of people have him as their favorite X-Man.
I think he's in every human being's top 5. Like I think he's
Yeah,
he's in,
yeah, I
if
agree.
he's not, it's just because they've never heard of X-Men in their lives.
Right.
And once
right.
they do, Nightcrawler will be in their top 5 somewhere.
I agree completely. He's in most people's top 5, I believe. So yeah, there's I liked that. So I haven't really enjoyed Ultimate X-Men book by Peach Momoko, and I haven't talked about it since like the second or third issue, I think. So I kind of appreciate their in these books, like some of the more recent books, the Ultimate Universe is trying to do something more with the mutants, because as I understand it, there's not a whole lot going on in the Ultimate X-Men book with X-Men characters. It's all just kind of Peach Momoko's characters. So it's nice to see this Ultimate Wolverine book, and it's like, oh, there's the X-Men characters like that you would have maybe expected to read about in a book titled Ultimate X-Men, but you don't. But at least they show up in Ultimate Wolverine. So there's that. Otherwise, I don't have a whole lot else to say about it, but I'm sure.
I will say, when I was like scrambling for stuff to read so I could have content for the stream, I distinctly saw that on the shelf, and I went, meh. Like it didn't make me want to pick it up.
Yeah, and that's kind of, and yeah, I agree. That is too bad. And I am hoping it gets more compelling. And there's like a tiny little thing at the end, and I don't want to spoil it, but it's like the story could go somewhere, but I have to admit, I also am just not interested in the current setup of the new Ultimate Universe, like the fact that it, like the Maker, all of that stuff. It's been a hard sell for me, and I've been keeping an eye on it because the original Ultimate Universe books meant a lot to me, because I was like all in on those when they came out. I was like that age for them, and I really liked them. So I'm keeping a glance at these new books. I'm keeping them at a distance though. But yeah, I mean, we'll see where it goes. All right, let's see. I've got 2 more books here to talk about. You've got one. Let's talk about this one because it's keeping with the theme of my criticism of Ultimate Wolverine. Is this book Behemoth, which I really liked the premise of it, which this is like, and my criticism is the same as Wolverine, which is the selling point of this issue. Behemoth is all you get in this first issue, which is let's take a look at the cover here. You get this giant like monster's teeth and like people and a bus falling into it, and like again, like the promo for this is a giant kaiju attacks the city and eats a bus, and people are trapped inside the monster's belly and have to figure out a way to survive.
Okay.
Oh, that's okay. That's
it's kind of neat.
It's a high concept, and the whole story is like
Behemoth, bus, monster belly.
It's the like the opening to like the opening 5 minutes of your movie, where it's all like establishing your characters,
very Pacific
and the monster. It's very Pacific Rim, exactly. And I like, again, I don't want to like spoil it, but like the final page is just them like,
oh no, we're inside of it.
They get eaten and they're like, oh no, where are we? And it's like, I guess I'm just like, I'm being crabby about this, because it's like the final twist is like, oh my gosh, where are me? I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, where am me now? The final twist is the character saying, where are we? And I'm reading it. I'm going, you're inside the monster. The promo told me that's where you are. like it's not a twist, and that's the kind of thing that really bothers me. Where like it's different than like it maybe it's just my problem with advertising. Maybe somebody that doesn't know anything about this and they would just see like, oh cool, a monster comic, I'll read that, and then they get to the end and they're like, oh interesting. I still feel like there's not enough there because you need like more of a twist to that other than just like that generic cliffhanger of, again, this is a criticism I have of a lot of books, especially Dark Horse books. I feel like this is a problem with books that in my mind they feel like they are TV show pitches that
Mhm.
get turned into comics.
It's like you're
Whereas
watching a pilot.
exactly, it feels like you're watching a pilot, but it doesn't even feel like you're watching a full episode. It feels like you're watching the opening scene to the pilot.
The
And
trailer.
the trailer, right. And so it just like I'm sorry if I'm like being overly critical here, because it's like I like the concept and the art is good, like it's a good looking book, but tonally I was just like, so I was like, okay, get to the monster, like get to the part where they're in the monster, and just again, if you read this as a trade paperback it might read a little bit better, but then again, that's the thing, is you're not releasing it directly as a graphic novel. It's a monthly issue, and I'm old school, when it comes to that. So I like older comics because they feel denser, they feel a little more substantial. It's this thing I complain about a lot with a lot of newer comics, but yeah, I'm running out of things to complain about. So I probably will, admittedly, read the second issue because I like Godzilla, I like monster comics, and this it's again, it's like it's a good enough concept. I'm like, okay, where this could get weird. Like they're live, Jonah and the whale, like these
Yeah.
people, in a monster belly. But I feel like again, that should have been the first couple of pages that get you into the story, and I'm like,
It
okay, now what happens?
it does, yeah, say it does automatically come with like questions you don't immediately have answers to, like, which is the answer of like, yeah, they're probably going to survive because it's a comic book, but you don't know how they're going to get out of that. You don't know what's
Right,
going to happen.
right,
Maybe this is a comic where they do all die.
exactly,
Like
yeah.
you don't like. There's enough questions that are like you do want to read to see what happens. It's just that it doesn't do it doesn't do more than you expect in the first issue. You want the second issue right now.
Right, and that's the thing. I think it's a criticism I have of a lot of books where I'm like, this is almost a completely inconsequential issue one, because you can buy issue two, and issue two will open with a recap. In the previous issue, our main characters got eaten by a kaiju, and now they have to survive. Like, okay, there was like no extra information in the comic other than that recap.
You probably could actually open a comic like that, like without the lead up, and just be
I
like the opening being, hey, there's a kaiju attacking a city, hey, there's people stuck inside, and then sprinkle in through there the scientists finding scales on the beach from a week ago and like stuff like
Oh
that. Like
yeah, there's lots of ways you could tell this story in like a nonlinear fashion, or just you could be creative with the narrative to make it feel substantial while also like creating twists and like cliffhangers and stuff.
mm,
But instead, it's just very linear. It's very straightforward, and a lot of these stories, they feel like they all want to be the movie From Dusk Till Dawn,
mm,
which is a movie that I love, which is a movie that has a legitimate twist like halfway through.
yes, and it's unfortunately a movie that's so well known that you can't watch it because I didn't watch it organically. I didn't watch it not knowing what the twist was ahead of time.
Right.
But like, and if anybody, if the two people watching this haven't seen Dust Till Dawn and don't know the twist, watch it without knowing the twist if you possibly
If
can.
you can, but
It's
it's
a
also one of those movies that's always used as an example of
yes,
the like, yo, you'll never. It's just like that movie, Dust Till Dawn.
yes.
you know,
Like even saying there's a twist cues you in on it because you go, okay, this movie that I'm spending an hour, because it takes a bit, like this movie that I'm
yeah,
spending an hour watching isn't the movie I'm going to watch because everybody says there's a twist. Like
right.
it sets you up. And
But
like,
yeah, that's what I was getting at. Like reading these first issues, they feel like I've already had the twist spoiled for me, but there's not really a twist. It's just like this is just what the story is, but they're presenting it as if it's a twist, but it's not. So I don't know. That's just me. That's my little rant for the day. I you know what? This isn't even, if you've watched this stream regularly, this isn't even the first time I've given that exact rant. I've talked about it with a few other comics that have come out in the last couple of months. So yeah, we're gonna leave it at, let's be more positive. Let's be positive, Baron.
be positive.
Let's talk about a book that you have here, because I was really glad that we got a chance to show it off.
So that thing you're saying about issue 1 being good and like being nothing inherently wrong, but also not exactly doing more beyond like selling the like just
Mhm.
letting you know the premise and stuff like that. Hellboy, Shadow of the Golden Crane. It's a Hellboy comic. Hellboy's in it.
All right.
There's an organization called the Golden Crane, and then there's a monster that they defeat by the end of it,
Let's
and
take a
and
look
that's
at
more the
this.
setup. Like it's 100% like it's good. It feels like it feels like all setup. Like
Hmm.
it's good. It's setting up that there's this other like more ancient than uh this like alternate like Eastern themed organization that like takes care of monsters that has like its origins and like you know centuries ago in China. But like that's it. You get like a setup on that, and then like there's a monster, and using lessons learned from the past encounter, they defeat the monster in the present. But it's like it's all setup. So it's good. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that I need the issue 2 to judge it properly
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's not exposition. It's better than exposition.
I was
It's
gonna say this
showing
feels like there's a lot of. I'm just flipping through it.
it's
There's a lot of
showing a
action.
lot more than it. Yes, there's a good amount of action, and it's showing a lot more than it's telling. It's not just like dry exposition.
Hmm.
It's just that like it's setting up for I can't give like a safe judgment on it. It's fine so far. There's nothing wrong with it so far. I enjoy it, but like I can't give like a safe judgment of how good it is. I mean, it's Hellboy. It's probably not going to be bad.
Right, right. I mean, that was basically my opinion of the first issue of New Gods, where I'm like, this
Yes.
is really good, but it's really difficult to judge it based just on this, you know.
Mm.
But one thing I will point out, I didn't realize this. I saw that it was a new Hellboy. I know that Mike Mignola is not he's not doing as much art as he used to. I guess we'll put it like that. And I know that there have been a lot of other artists that have been doing new Hellboy comics, but I didn't realize that this one is by Michael Avon Oming, who I don't know if you know who that is, Aaron, but he wrote and drew the William of
Oh,
Newberry comic
okay.
that
Now that you mention that, I can see it completely.
yeah, and he I mean Michael Avon Oming, he's a veteran of the comic book industry. He's been writing and drawing comics for a long time. But yeah, that's really cool getting to see him do Hellboy. Like he you know what?
It.
His style works perfectly.
I say now that you say it, I can't not see it.
But yeah, it matches like Peter. God, I'm losing all my names here. Mike Mignola, like it's not exactly like Mike Mignola's style, but it like feels adjacent to it. Just like he uses a lot of heavy blacks the same way that Mignola does. It's
Hmm.
not quite as gothic. It's a little more colorful. But yeah, I like the look of this a lot. Actually,
No,
this
it
is good
is very
looking.
visually appealing, and I enjoy it quite a bit.
Hmm.
I I was doing a bad sell of how I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it quite a bit. I am eager for more because I can't say for certain I love it or if it was just like if it just I can't say if I like it just because it's Hellboy.
I gotcha.
Does that
Yeah,
make
yeah,
sense? Like
yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay, we got one more book to talk about, and I want to end on a positive note because I don't like to be too negative, even though it's really easy to be negative about comic books. But there is a new #1 comic book series coming out tomorrow, and this is I don't know, this might be one of the best comic book covers I've seen in a long time. I am of course talking about Rogue Savage Land. Look at that beautiful cover by Care Andrews. This guy, he is just Care Andrews is such an awesome artist.
look at
He's
Magneto.
I know, yeah, look at the bare chest and all, like
It
he's
ripped
hairy.
open hairy Magneto
So
chest. Us.
Care Andrews is such a great artist, and I'm actually a little disappointed that he doesn't illustrate this whole comic. He's just doing the cover. But my favorite thing about Care is that he's a very versatile artist. He has a lot of different styles, and he's been doing a lot of these covers for Marvel where he's just completely riffing on early 90s style. Like this is clearly like a Jim Lee influenced
Mhm.
X-Men, to the point where he's actually riffing on a very specific issue of X-Men, and we happen to have the facsimile reprint of this issue that came out a few months ago, and you can just see them side by side here.
Yes.
Like it's like clearly like what he's going for. Like it's rogues in the same outfit. Even on this cover, Nick Fury is here, and then in the little corner box, he drew Nick
I
Fury in there.
I appreciate Rogue's cleverly hidden feet.
Yes, I mean that it wouldn't be a '90s comic if you showed
If you
showed
could
the
see,
feet. Yeah, if you could see the feet. So this comic, this is Rogue Savage Land, and this is one of I don't know if they have an official name, but I've been calling these retro continuity comics, where Marvel just hires. It's sometimes it's they bring in a veteran creator, like we've talked about a few of the X-Men series where they bring in Chris Claremont, and they're just like they're just like Chris, write a Wolverine story set in between issues centered around issue 266, or no, not 266. That's the first appearance of Gambit. Although they had him, they write a Storm story that's right after issue 266. Just takes place right at and it's just like a 5 issue story. It takes place in between issues 266 and 267, and it's really inconsequential because it ends. It has to be entertaining, but it also has to have no lasting impact that would interfere with the events of the comic that was published now 30 to 40 years ago. But old guys like me, I like my old continuity. I like my 80s and 90s comics.
I this is mostly related at this point. I like that you brought up the first appearance of Gambit by accidentally listing it off because I specifically do, despite not being as old. I'm not gonna say I'm not an old guy, but despite not being as old of a guy, I do know that comic because my friend was rather proud of the fact that he owns that comic. And the first issue of Gambit is he is robbing Egyptian museums in
Yeah,
Cairo, Illinois,
Cairo,
which
Illinois. Yep.
is utterly hilarious to me.
Yep, it's really funny. But yeah, so this is one of those series. This is not a veteran creators per se. This is actually a new creative team, but they're doing kind of one of these retro continuity stories. This is written by Tim Seeley, who is a writer whose work I'm usually a really big fan of. And I don't know why I said usually because I'm pretty much always a big fan of his. And Tim Seeley was one of the writers of Local Man, which is a book that I've been talking about a lot every time it comes out. Excuse me. And yeah, this is basically like a Rogue story. There's a very brief period of time where Rogue was trapped in the Savage Land. It's there's like I don't even know if I can begin to go into the complicated reasons. So
Let's
just Google Siege Perilous. Like just like go online and Google X-Men Siege Perilous and just get the whole history of that because that's what was happening in the X-Men books at the time. And they go through a thing called the Siege Perilous, and weird stuff happens to them. They all kind of get transported into different places. They lose their powers. This is the period where Psylocke gets body swapped with the Asian assassin, and that's when Psylocke becomes Japanese for like no reason, and then stays that way forever.
Sorry, I was laughing at the comments. It's Cairo.
It's Cairo,
Cairo, Illinois.
Okay, I get it now. But yeah, so this is a very specific period in X-Men's history, and Rogue gets trapped in the Savage Land, and so they just this little adventure. She meets Magneto because this was also a period where Magneto was living in exile in the Savage Land,
As you do.
as you do. And then there's an ongoing plot with Kazar. There's I like the villains in this. They're kind of set up like Creature from the Black Lagoon esque,
like troglodytes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the Savage Land is the place they would be. But I liked this a lot, and one of the reasons I got to say I liked it. I started this off by complaining that Kara Andrews isn't drawing the whole thing, but I have to admit I'm not familiar with the artist who is doing this, but it is Zulema Scato Lavina, I believe. Pronunciation, I have no idea, but I'm just reading it off the page, and it looks pretty good. Like it looks like an authentic '90s comic. If you've listened to this, if you've watched this stream before, I'm pretty harsh on a lot of like average Marvel comics. They don't always look great, but this is a good looking book, and I think that he's really bringing it. And like this pinup page here, it's really nice looking. So yeah, he's definitely like this is a fun book. This is also like
that's a picture to add to your Rogues gallery.
So yes, good one. I feel like we should almost end right there, but I
No one's watching at that point.
I-
They're all they all
they're
left.
distracted by look at that.
They
Look,
just
just So this is definitely a comic that again, this is for me. I was a 13-year-old boy when I discovered Rogue, and I really liked the way Jim Lee drew her around this period of her history.
there's definitely a style.
There's a style there, and this was Rogue is like I don't want to like overshare because I'm always I'm afraid of oversharing, but Rogue is actually one of the exact reasons my parents didn't want me reading comic books. um, and so this is definitely for a very specific audience to a certain degree, but I don't feel like it's as actually as gratuitous as what a lot of the comics were back in the 90s. There's a fun little like I like that. So another thing I like is that this has like solid narrative story going on here, and that makes sense because Tim Seeley is a good writer. And there's a fun little thing like she's trapped in the Savage Land all by herself, but she kind of explains how her powers work, where she touches people and she steals a bits of their memory. And so the only way, ironically, the only way that she's able to stay sane by being stranded by herself is to draw on all of these memories of her friends or other people that she knows to try and like feel like she's not alone.
I've said this before, and this is just a small thing. Wolverine has a troubling tendency to cook things on his claws,
Yeah.
and that just seems wildly unsanitary to me. Like those have been in him, those have been in other people. Like
other things, people.
Yeah,
like, yeah.
I would not
Is-
want like when Wolverine like comically stabs a hot dog at like a barbecue. I do not want that hot dog.
They're sterile. His healing factor
Yeah,
sterilizes
maybe.
It. But anyway, so yeah, we're gonna end it right there. I was really happy with Rogue Savage Land, and admittedly, I guess that's just the other. It's like when I saw that it was coming out, I was just like, ah, it's another like. There's so many X-Men books. There's like never stop with the X-Men books. But then I saw this cover, and I was like, oh,
Well, one more X-Men
one
book.
more X-Men book. Yeah. Picks of the week. I guess we should end with that. Ooh, that's hard to say. I didn't get to read a lot of my favorite books like that are in my regular pull. So of the new comic book series that I read, I legitimately am probably going to pick Rogue as my pick of the week. If for no other reason than this hot fire Kara Andrews cover. Aaron, you read a few more substantial books than me. What was your favorite that you read?
If I had to pick one, I think I liked New Gods more than GI Joe, and that's hard because I did like GI Joe.
Mm-hmm.
They were lucky this wasn't last week when I would have just said Transformers, and it would have been the boring answer, but I mean the correct answer.
With me, yeah.
But
exactly the boring but correct answer.
But New Gods was very, very good. I enjoyed it. I liked the kind of different style to it. I really like Cosmic DC. I like I like a lot of that kind of stuff. It's very. I mean, I like the design and the style of all of it. It's just fun. It's fun. I think that's what the word I'll use.
You know what? Fun is as good a reason as any for it to be your pick of the week. All right, everybody. I think that's going to be it. This was a long episode. That's what happens when you have two guys named Aaron who both like to talk a lot. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. If you can't get your comics from us, you should get them from somewhere. That's like our good friend Dan likes to say. We should definitely try to get them from us here at Fantasy Books and Games because you not only get cool comics, you get to talk to us about them. And as you can tell from watching this stream,
we don't stop.
We don't stop.
We just keep talking until you leave.
On that note, we're gonna end it. I'm gonna just like hit the end stream button really quickly. So thanks everybody. We'll see you later. Bye.
Take care.